Welcome back, it's me, Lou, and I'm here for another action figure unboxing and review. And today we are looking at this. It's pretty big. It's a 2-pack. It's a Target exclusive. It's the Batman vs. Bane by Spin Master. So this is a giant 2-pack. I realize probably a lot of you watching this video don't collect the big 12-inch Titan Hero kind of action figure line. Hasbro makes giant 12-inch figures. Mattel makes giant 12-inch figures, and I kind of have a soft spot for them. For me, it's kind of like a callback to my childhood. And I don't buy these very often. It has to take like a special character or a cool design for me to want to say, hey, I'm going to buy this. Just because they're super big and I don't necessarily have the space to display them. And the last thing I kind of need is, I don't need a giant collection of this 12-inch superheroes. Even though I'd love to have one. You know, I kind of got to pick and choose, but I love this Batman and I love this design of Bane. So yeah, this is giant. Let me see if I can fit this in my camera entirely. Yeah, so here's the box. On the upper left, it says first edition, exclusive figure. So Bane's an exclusive that you can only get in this 2-pack. And on the back, we have some beautiful character artwork. Batman and Bane, they're fighting on a unfinished building at a construction site. It looks awesome. So yeah, this is a huge figure. They're both 12 inches. And I realize most of you probably do not collect these figures, but I've been eyeing this one for a while, and I told myself I wasn't going to leave Target empty-handed today, and I thought now would be the perfect time to pull the trigger on this. So let's get these two out of the package and take a look at them. All right, first off, I don't even know I don't even know how to open a box like this. I don't know if I need scissors. All right, take it back. Alright, so here they are. First impressions of these two behemoths while they're still in the tray. They're big. Alright, for one of the reasons why I got this too is for a second I thought that, so the McFarlane DC Multiverse figures are out, and there's that one wave where you can make, was it Last Night on Earth Bane? And that's a giant figure. And I already have all those figures, but I didn't assemble the Bane figure yet. But part of me, when I was looking at this this toy on the shelves, I was kind of wondering, I'm like, is this figure something I could kind of fudge into my 6-inch or 7-inch Batman line? And to be honest, unless I have a really vivid imagination, most of you would probably say probably not. I think if I was desperate and I needed a Bane figure, maybe I'd fudge this into a 7-inch line, or even that. There's that Batman that McFarlane DC Multiverse animated series Batman. That's about 7 inches. That's a much more cartoon aesthetic, and I think you might be able to get away with mixing this figure in with that specific character. Just because that character probably come up to his chest, and if you read the comics or seen some of the cartoons, every now and then the artists take liberties with the size of Bane. Sometimes you might see Bane drawn as big as the Hulk. But I doubt many of you would consider, I doubt many of you would consider putting this in a 6-inch lineup just because it's giant. But I mean, that was for me the whole that's why I was sold on this figure, is because it's huge and it looks crazy. The Batman's awesome. This is a mold that they've released before, and it's just reuse. Let's get these guys out. Alright, this Bane one's giving me some trouble. Just give me a moment. Okay, these are huge. So yeah, if you've never if you've never held any of these figures before, they're giant. These are like 12 inches. Hasbro has been making these style of figures for a long time. They're kind of labeled their Titan heroes. Mattel's dabbled in this line for a little bit. Besides doing, I think they used to do this with their superheroes also, but I don't know if they release them now, but there was a line of WWE figures that were kind of released at this scale too, and those were called True Moves, and they're big and they're articulated. But this is Spin Master's take on the budget 12-inch figure, and they feel budget. They're large, they're hollow plastic, but what they have going for them is that these feel like toys that are begging to be played with. If you're a child, or if you have the mind of a child, the minute you handle one of these, you can't resist the urge to want to play with them because they're big, they're burly, you know, they're slightly articulated, and they're they're really cool, to be honest. Let's take a look at Batman first. So Batman, I like this color scheme a lot, just because for me this is a callback to the '89 Michael Keaton Batman with this color scheme. Granted, the logo is different, but I love the all-black Batman uniform. The armor design on this is actually one of my favorite Batman armors, period. It sounds funny to say, but there was an earlier release of this figure in, I think it was gray and black. I'll show it to you later. I actually have it with me. And the armor design, it looks really cool. And when I saw that, I'm like, you know what? Hands down, that's one of my favorite Batman designs. And that includes like the films, the video games, and the comic books. Because there's something about this design. This really calls to me. It's simple. It's kind of subtle. It's a little bit modern because it's a little bit more armored, and it just looks, for me, it looks really badass. And in the all-black color scheme, I'm not sure how well my camera's capturing this detail, but there's good enough detail going on in here. Articulation-wise, his head rotates. The cape's kind of this weird plastic kind of stuff. I don't know how to describe it. It feels more plasticky than cloth. It almost feels kind of like what you imagine like a picnic tablecloth would feel like, but thinner. So his arms can rotate, his elbows bend, his elbows can swivel a little. There's no waist articulation. He could kick up, he could kick out, he could bend his knees. There's no ankle articulation, so there's enough articulation here. It's not strictly just 5 points. There's different shades of black here. The camera, I'm not sure how well it catches it. There's a glossy black and almost kind of like a slight gunmetal finish on like the ribs and the abdomen. The paint job here isn't the greatest. There's some marring on it and a little scuffing, but I can live with that because, you know, this is, if you bought this figure by itself, I think this figure would be like 10 bucks. For me, the main event is Bane. Bane is burly. He's like, this is like, when you want to think of like shampoo bottle toys, this is like the king of shampoo bottle toys. It's nice, it's big, it's hollow. His head rotates a little. His arms rotate, they could move out. He has wrist articulation. Batman has it also. Batman has wrist articulation. This guy can swivel at the waist. Unfortunately, his legs don't do anything, which is alright because he's very big and top heavy. And both these figures, they're 12 inches, and Bane's kind of a little shorter just because Batman has the horns, but he's not a smaller figure by any means. He's a big boy. He's very swole, very thick. The one thing I can appreciate about this figure is that a lot of these giant 12-inch figures, you'll see this sometimes with the Hasbro stuff too, is that they're big, but when you view them at a profile, they kind of look a bit flat. Like, they always have a very flat ass. Their chests don't kind of protrude as much as they should. But the Bane figure here, he's sculpted really well, and he feels giant. He has a big chest. I mean, he does have a flat ass, but if it doesn't feel as... how can I explain? His sculpt doesn't look as budgety as it could. I mean, you look at it, it does look like a budget figure, but I think even in the right hands, if you gave this to a customizer, they'd probably be able to give this such a brilliant paint job and make this look amazing. And if you're a customizer watching this video, I highly suggest picking this two-pack up just to custom paint the Bane. There's a lot of, like, this is a big canvas, it's a nice sculpt, and I think the effects you could get painting this would be amazing. You know, start off with a really nice base colors, apply some highlights, some shadows, maybe a wash, and you have yourself an amazing... It's almost like a model kit. If some of you are familiar with, like, some of the... especially some of the older, like, superhero model kits they used to make back in the day, like in the 90s, there's Horizon kits, and they made, like, the Punisher and Silver Surfer, and I think Monogram even dabbled in making superhero model kits. This to me kind of feels like a callback to that, but it's just larger and slightly articulated. So if you're a customizer and you just love painting and making stuff look pretty, you know, I highly suggest you pick this two-pack up just for the Bane. There's a lot that could be done with this to make it look like a really standout showpiece in your collection. So yeah, so don't sleep on these budget figures. Just because they're budget figures, and you know, I think people get caught up in the buzzwords and, you know, what's in and fashionable to collect, but just because a figure is budget or under, you know, 20 bucks or $10 or whatever like that, doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be a bad toy. You know, if I bought this expecting it to, like, be on the same par as, like, a McFarlane figure, you know, I'm fooling myself. But, you know, if you take this thing at face value for what it is, it's amazing. Any child under the ages of, like, 8, you know, would be all over this. It's really cool. It's a nice big burly interpretation of Bane. It looks like Bane. He has the backpack. He has all the tubes feeding him venom, so he looks all swole. It looks cool. And the Batman's awesome too. As I've stated previously, this is one of my favorite Batman costume designs, period. It looks amazing. And probably many of you are thinking I'm high right now, but it's a really cool figure. And I can't get enough of these. I'm tempted to buy. I keep on seeing it. When I'm at Target, I'm always looking at these, and some of them just kind of stare at me back. Like, there's the Aquaman figure, and I'm looking at it, and it's always telling me to buy them. And I'm like, maybe next time, Aquaman. But I kind of want the Nightwing, because I love Dick Grayson, and Batman needs his partner in crime to, like, you know, take on the villains of Gotham City. So I might cave in and get the Nightwing. And since we're on the subject of these, I hope I frame these properly too, because it seems like every time I look at my computer monitor, I'm always just showing them from the chest up. So let me bring them down just a little. So since we're on the subject of these 12-inch figures, let me grab some other ones. So this is the Batman one I keep on talking about. I saw this at Walmart, and I think this might have been in the first or second wave of, like, those Spin Master 12-inch figures. And these are the same mold, but this one has a great color scheme. I love the gray and I love the black. And when I saw this at the store, I was looking at the armor and I'm like, that looks really badass. Because there's parts of it that it kind of reminds me of the armor and costume in, like, the video games and the Arkham Knight games. But it's kind of pulling back on the details. It's not, like, going as crazy with all the mesh and the hyper detail and the armor plating. This one does a good job of just being kind of subtle and a little bit more understated. It feels like a weird amalgamation of the comic book costume and the video game costume. And for me, that was like, God, this looks cool. Like, the head sculpting, like, they're both the same sculpts. But this one does a better job of showcasing all the details, because this guy is casted all in black and you kind of lose some of it. But here you can really see, like, the details in his head. Nice sculpting on his cowl. On his chest, you have these kind of cool little, you know, engravings and tracings. The belt buckle kind of looks inspired from the comic books. And it's weird because I take it back. They might actually be different. Alright, I take it back. These aren't the same sculpts. They're actually different. Okay, that's odd. So, yeah, right, I take it back. Alright, rewind. Alright, so altogether, these are completely different sculpts altogether. Oh, which is cool. So, yeah, I was always under impression when I saw this at the store. There's so much about this that looks almost identical to this in terms of the body armor. But upon closer investigation, they're actually different. It looks like this armor was inspired by this one. It seems like when they designed this, they took some of the elements of this and kind of reworked it. It almost seems like the artist, I could be wrong on this, but in my head it seems like these might have been designed by the same guy. And when this guy designed this costume, it seems like it was more of a second pass and trying to figure out what I could do differently with this one to make improvements. And yeah, the body armor is actually different. In terms of, I think what confused me is that a lot of the elements are similar, but when you look at it closely, the detailing is actually a lot different. Like they both kind of share these shoulder plates up here, and there's kind of a rivet on them in the exact same location. But when you look closely at them, the sculpting's a little bit different. Like this one looks a little bit more refined, whereas this one looks like it might have been an earlier pass and it's not as detailed. Likewise, this one has a really detailed torso, but it almost looks like whoever designed this took a cue from this one's and said, hey, how can I make this one look even better? And then they sculpted more ridges, more plating. So yeah, I was kind of surprised. For a second, I thought they were the exact same thing. Oh, my mistake. So I actually have two very unique figures then, which I'm glad to say. But like I said, I love this costume design a lot. It's amazing. I'm just a big fan of like some of the different looks of Batman. Batman's a very blessed character in the sense that he has, you know, so many looks that could easily pass off as, you know, Batman and still look iconic. You can't mess around with some characters too much because then they kind of lose that iconic feel. But Batman's one of those dudes that, you know, you can kind of play around with his colors a little or change out certain things and it'll always kind of still just in the end look like Batman. So that's, I don't know, this is cool. And this is actually one of my favorite budget 12-inch figures. It's Thanos from Avengers. I think this was Infinity War. This is a big boy. He's 12 inches. Very, very detailed. When I purchased them, one of the things that prompted me to get them was that I had a hard time trying to find all the Marvel Legends figures I needed to build the Marvel Legends Thanos figure. But this guy was always just sitting on the shelves, and I'm like, you know what? In the meantime, I'll just grab this guy, and I haven't regretted it ever since. He has some awesome detail. There's a nice micro texture on his pants. He has all the ridges on his face and his arms. The gauntlet's really detailed, and I think he has some sort of weird feature. Like if you bought the Iron Man figure that had the weird backpack with sound effects, I think you could plug that into here. And if you stood him next to Bane, these guys are big and burly. They could be like a wrestling tag team, and they could like take over everything. So yeah, let's wrap this up. So do I recommend these? It depends. If you're like me and you kind of dabble outside of the 6-inch stuff, like if you're strictly a 6-inch collector and if all you do is collect Marvel Legends and the 7-inch McFarlane multiverse figures, and you know you're not going to be these figures aren't aimed at you. These are aimed at kids and parents. But if you're like me and you like fiddling around with toys in general, regardless of their scale or their price point or if they're fashionable to collect, you know, I think these are fun. And I don't know, I couldn't pass these up. It's friggin' Bane, for God's sake. I mean, why would you want to pass up on Bane? You know, for 19 bucks you get 2 giant figures. And then, you know, some collectors are going to be like, you know, this doesn't fit on my shelf. Not literally, but, you know, in terms of thematically. You know, if you strictly have a shelf of just 6-inch guys, you can't have a guy like this towering over all your figures. But I beg to differ. I think he'd be a great character to have it towards the back. If you have like a rogues gallery of Batman villains, you know, to stand Bane behind all of them. He's going to tower over all of them, and I think it's a great centerpiece to a collection. The Batman's nice. You know, if you have kids and they love superheroes, there's no reason why I shouldn't give them a 12-inch Batman. Growing up, I kind of had a couple of larger superheroes. Like, I had a Spider-Man that was maybe 12 inches. And I don't think he was articulated. I think he had his hand up like this. And then there was like a hole where, like, I think his webbing could thread out. And through his eye, he had like a weird magnifying glass or something, or a telescope. And then you'd look through the back of his head. It was really weird, but it was the late 70s, and those were the kind of toys we got. But something like this is cool. If you have a kid that's like 4 years old, you know, get him this Batman. They'll love it. And then you can just keep the Bane for yourself. You know, keep this in your den or at your office at work, and just fiddle around with it in between meetings or something. So yeah, I'd probably rate this, I don't know, 7.5 to an 8. But, you know, I might even go as far as an 8.5, just because I think it's a bargain. You know, for $19, you're getting 2 giant 12-inch figures, and the Bane for me, I think, is just awesome. I love Bane. So once again, my name is Lou. Thank you so much for stopping by and checking out my videos. Feel free to drop by anytime, and I'll talk to you later. Take care.